Today I'm going to talk about health insurance, and I'm going to share with you the insurance coverage that Mark and I have had over the last 4 years while living outside of the United States. If you're new to my channel, welcome. My name is Kirsten, and my husband Mark and I moved away from the United States in 2020 during the midst of COVID. We first went to Playa del Carmen, Mexico, and then we went to Portugal, and now we are in Bangkok, Thailand. And over that time period, we have had a few different insurance companies. So I'm just going to give you my thought process behind each and tell you the insurance that we had and how much we paid for it. Now, if you're from the United States, your health insurance coverage most likely is tied to your employment. So that probably involves every year at open enrollment, choosing from the 3 or 4 plans that your employer has on offer and making that decision usually based on cost, freedom of choice of providers to visit, and what is actually covered. Now, we were fortunate living in San Diego, California, because within a stone's throw from where we lived, we had access to 2 phenomenal hospital systems. And regardless of the insurance that we had over the years, we always had access to one of those 2 or both hospital systems. As far as health insurance goes, we've always been quite comfortable. It was just never an issue. That's pretty much what our insurance experience was like before we moved abroad. It was a non-issue, basically. We were always covered, we always had good coverage, and we always had access to excellent hospitals. In 2020, we decided rather abruptly that I would quit working. I hadn't really planned to quit at that time, but 2020 was what it was. And so I had done a fair amount of research on health insurance in previous years when we first started thinking about living abroad. And I remember back at that time, I just thought it was really, really expensive, and I didn't really look into it anymore. So fast forward to 2020, okay, we've decided we're going to leave, and so we need to get some health insurance. So what we did initially is not buy any health insurance. And I don't recommend that you do this. I'm just telling you what our experience was. When I separated from my employer, I still had access to COBRA coverage. And because we were going to Playa del Carmen, Mexico, Mexico was really the only place we could travel to during that time. The world was shut down. We thought, well, if we had some kind of emergency or needed some major care, we could always come back to the United States and initiate that COBRA. Now, that thinking, that wouldn't go over today. I'm in a completely different headspace today than I was in 2020. And the fact that I thought, oh, if something major happened, we could go back to the United States. I just don't think that is realistic, but that's just my personal opinion. When I started searching for this insurance once we got to Mexico, because we just left, and once I started searching for the insurance, the first thing I wanted to look at was how much we were paying for our insurance in the US, because I didn't pay a lot of attention to it. It was just deducted from my paychecks. So when I went back and looked, I saw that we were paying $260 per month for our health care, which is phenomenal. $260 for the both of us. That was a really great deal. And the coverage that we got, everything was covered. We never paid for anything. I actually went back when I was preparing for this video, and when I looked at the employer portion of that coverage, our portion was $260 per month. but the employer's portion was $1,380 per month. And that kind of blew my mind because I never paid attention to it on my pay stubs before. So that would make that insurance coverage back in the US in 2020 for the two of us $1,640 per month. And that's when I realized, oh, this is what people are talking about. People are paying that high price monthly for their health insurance. It just blew my mind because that had never been our experience before. So when we got to Playa del Carmen, I basically started researching policies. I tried to find out who the players were in town because there were a lot of foreigners living in Playa del Carmen that had lived down there for years. And so I figured they know what's going on. I know absolutely nothing. We didn't overly research Playa del Carmen. We just knew we had been to the Yucatan on vacation and we loved it down there. The weather was good and it was open, so we went. So, long story short, I did what a lot of the people were doing down there. I contacted a broker who was well regarded amongst the foreigners living down there, and she hooked us up with an insurance policy. And the insurance company was Vumi, and we had the Vumi Expat Gold plan, I believe it was. And full disclosure, we never used it. And full disclosure, thinking back at this time, I'm not even sure what it really covered. And it appeared to be one of those insurances where you pay for everything and then can get reimbursed. Like, I never looked into how the policy actually worked. I was just more consumed with getting us some coverage. So what we paid for that policy for 1 year in November 2020, for the two of us, the annual premium was $3,053. And we paid for that annual premium upfront. And that policy, looking back at it, because I did go back and look at the declarations page, it insured us everywhere except for the US, and it had a $2,500 deductible. So $3,000 for an insurance policy, even though I didn't know what I was getting, it seemed fairly reasonable. In 2021, we set our sights on Portugal, and for the visa process, there were a few different things that were required, and one of those requirements was health insurance. Especially once you got into country, you needed to show a policy that was good specifically for Portugal, and that was in addition to a policy needed for the visa application. We arrived in Portugal in May 2021. We still had that Vumi policy, but again, many people had come before us. We wanted to be certain that we had the appropriate insurance, not only for ourselves, but for the temporary residency purposes. So once again, figuring out who the players are, figuring out what a lot of people are doing, we ended up joining a group called AFPOP, which stood for something like Americans and Foreigners in Portugal, something like that. And they actually sponsored a group policy. And that policy was with Alliance, however you say it, Alliance. And it was actually a really good policy because it covered lots of things, and direct billing was important. We used that insurance just like we did our insurance in the United States. We went for our doctor's appointments, we went for our imaging, we went for our labs, and there was always some kind of copay involved. It was nominal, but we would pay our copay and then we weren't responsible for any other expenses. And that was what we were used to with insurance as far as our experience in the US. Alliance Portugal issues its policies, well, that particular program, the policies were issued in calendar year increments. So we arrived in May. We did have a travel insurance policy that we used for our visa application. But for the residency, we needed to get this alliance policy. And so for the first year, they issued us a 6-month policy because it was good from July 1st through the end of the year. For the last 6 months of the year, the premium was 1,369 euro, which in today's dollars is about 1,490 US dollars. And like I said, we had no problems with that policy. When it came time to renew the policy for the calendar year 2022, for the two of us, the policy premium was 2,500 euro. And in today's dollars, that's about 2,715 US dollars. And the Alliance policy and the VUMI policy that we had in Mexico, neither gave the option for monthly payments. So the premium was due in full at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of the policy period, and we paid those amounts. So as many of you know, in September of 2021, Mark and I moved ourselves from Lisbon, Portugal to Bangkok, Thailand. And so when we came to Thailand, we knew we were going to once again need another new insurance policy because our policy in Portugal, it was only good in Portugal, or maybe it was good in Portugal and Spain, but it certainly wasn't going to help us in Thailand. I believe there was a travel component to it. I'm not certain at this point, but I knew we were going to need a new insurance policy. So one thing I wanted to focus on after leaving Portugal is that our next policy would be something that we could continue over the years regardless of where we lived. So I began searching for policies that would cover us worldwide, including the US, worldwide, excluding the US, because you just can't predict the future, and who knew if we were going to love living in Thailand. We had a sneaking suspicion that we would, but you just never know. So I started really looking into different companies. I started again here in Bangkok, figuring out who the players are, what people were doing for insurance, and thinking about what I wanted us to do for our insurance. Now, there are a lot of Thai insurance companies and a lot of great policies, a lot of great Thai insurance policies, but I just didn't want to run into the need again to have to switch insurance policies. Plus, Mark and I are in our mid and late 50s, and we wanted to get locked in on one of these policies at this time because the older you get, the more difficult it is to secure health insurance. Another thing that I did is I started looking at the hospitals, figuring out, okay, where were we going to get our medical care? Where were we going to do our big health checkups? Where were we going to go just do some minor labs? There's a lot of price variability here in Bangkok with private hospitals. You've got a large range, and let's face it, it's 2024, and healthcare, health insurance, you're going to pay for it. You know, nothing is free. So when I looked at Bumrungrad Hospital and Bangkok Hospital, basically the two of the more well-known private hospitals, when I looked at their websites, I wanted to look and see what they were saying about insurance. Are they doing direct billing? Who are they contracted with? I just wanted to know that information before making a decision on which policies to inquire about and which to get quotes on. And so I also talked to a couple of insurance agents here to see what they would recommend for us. So after all of this, I really, again, wanted to get us a worldwide policy. And my two final contenders were Cigna Global and April Insurance. And so it looked like they both offered great coverage, direct billing, everything just looked okay, but it was expensive. And so that's when I realized, well, what price can you put on peace of mind? When we're thinking about buying health insurance, the reason we're doing it for most of us is to mitigate risk. We're paying a certain amount of money per month with the hopes that we never have to use the insurance, but if we do, we have that coverage and we can be taken care of. I'm talking hospitalizations, I'm talking major diagnoses. This is the reason we're buying the insurance for ourselves. So we ended up choosing Cigna Global. We chose Cigna Global mainly because direct billing is offered to the major hospitals so that we wouldn't have to come up with a bunch of money up front. In a lot of places, Thailand is similar to Mexico. When you go into the hospital, you better have some insurance in place or a lot of cash, because a lot of times you won't be treated if you don't show some means of payment. It's not uncommon for hospitals to keep you in the hospital until your bill is paid in full. With a major medical incident, we just don't want to put ourselves in that position. That's one of the main reasons we chose the Cigna policy, because of the direct billing and their contract with these major hospitals. And it's a huge company with deep pockets, so it has the money to pay claims. You might have to fight them for it, but they can afford to pay claims. And the coverage offered is pretty comprehensive. We do have inpatient only coverage. There are options for outpatient. You just have to pay extra. This by no means is any kind of endorsement for Cigna Global. I'm just sharing this information to let you know our thought process and what we pay for this coverage. Now, for Cigna, they offer a monthly premium payment option, and we chose that. We initiated this policy in January 2023, and for calendar year 2023, we chose the monthly payment option, and our monthly payment was $401 US. So that was for both of us. So you figure it was like $200 per person. So that seems pretty reasonable for coverage. In 2024, we renewed our same policy, and the premium increased from $401 per month to $425 per month. So that's only like a 6% increase. So that's encouraging. Now, our policy has a $3,000 deductible, but again, that is manageable should we need to be hospitalized for something major. The reason I wanted to do this video is because I know people worry about health insurance. If you're like me, you worry about it. It's also something that we don't have a lot of experience with because, like I said, you go to open enrollment, you choose something, things get paid for. It's kind of almost managed for us to a certain extent in the US. And then when you leave the US or leave your job and you're pretty much out there on your own trying to figure out insurance, it can be overwhelming. My advice to you is really educate yourself. Know what products are out there, know how they work. It's good to know what other people are doing, but at the same time, you need to do what you think is best for yourself. And maybe what everybody is doing isn't what you want to do, or maybe it is. But I just don't think you should make your decision based on what everybody else is doing. I also wanted to do this video to show that it's a legitimate expense that you need to plan for and give you an idea of how much it could cost you. Now, there's a lot of insurance companies where you can pay a lot less. Just make sure you know what you're getting. It really is a personal decision, and it's something you have to make to your comfort level. But again, do your homework, start educating yourself on this now if you're planning to move abroad, because it is something you're going to want to look into and you're going to want to think about it for years to come. Or maybe you're not. I don't know. That's up to you. Maybe you have deep pockets, because there are a lot of people here in Thailand that have really deep pockets. They don't even buy insurance because they just roll up to the hospital, and if they have a heart attack or need a major surgery, they just pay for it. And so there's that option too. We're just not those people. So we feel like we've come up with a good solution for us. Now, in all fairness, we haven't used the policy, and I'm not mad at it. $400 a month gives me peace of mind. So I hope you found this video helpful. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. But again, I'm no expert. I'm just sharing our experience. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.